welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. I have yet another film by Lucio Fulci. Now, I would have said this is the fifth and final Lucio Fulci Giallo film, but I found there was another one that's not really talked about called Perversion Story, which I'll have coming in the next few weeks. But this is one I've known about for a while and was never able to get a hold of. But that is his 1977 Giallo, The Psychic, which when I bought it, it came with this cover, which I think most people are more familiar with. I actually like the original 7 Notes in Black cover more, or Murder to the Tune of 7 Black Notes, as it's also called. I actually think 7 Notes in Black is a better title. But it stars Jennifer O'Neill, and it was written by Roberto Giavini and Dardano Sacchetti, which I believe that was the first. No, but Sacchetti worked with Fulci on. Oh no, it was Giavini. Giavini worked with Fulci a lot on like the first half of his career, including Perversion Story, Lizard Woman Skin, Don't Torture a Duckling, and both White Fang films, which I haven't seen. And Sacchetti would stay with him for Zombie 2, City of Living Dead, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, and New York Ripper. But it also stars Gabriele Ferzetti, Mark Porrell, Gianni Garco, Ida Galli, which I think she was credited as Evelyn. She's credited as Evelyn Stewart in this. She's been in a lot of Giallo. Sweet Body of Deborah, Weekend Murders, Case of the Scorpion's Tail, Bloodstained Butterfly, Knife of Ice, Footprints on the Moon, Maniac Mansion. Quite a few Gialli. Now apparently this was in development hell for some years. There's another title known as Death Tolls 7 Times. So all those titles with 7 I think are actually a better title than just The Psychic. Apparently Ernesto Gastaldi, my favorite Giallo writer, had a 12-page outline. It was going to be called Black Pentagram or Black Symphony, that dealt with a woman who dreams of a murder that will happen. But turns out that script was just a early work for Death Walks at Midnight. And this is actually based on where was it? It's based on a novel, actually. Terapia Mortale, which is a 1972 mystery novel by Vieri Razzini, which I guess is more of a whodunit, but with the whole parapsychology element to it. And at first, the movie was going to be fairly close to it, but Fulci was under contract with the De Laurentiis company, and there's a lot of back and forth over what kind of movie it would be. I think originally, because I don't think parapsychology was very well known back then, Fulci wanted it to be more of like a magical power type film, whereas of course the studio pushed for more of a Giallo type film. I guess Barbara Boucher was originally intended as one of the leads. That would have been awesome. And that's as early as 74. This was shot, it came out in 77. Apparently 70% of the resulting script went to Gianvini, and they added a touch of Argento mystery to the plot. And then there was some problems with the De Laurentiis company. And I guess the biggest thing that really got the ball rolling on the script writing was the three of them kind of hit a wall. And then Fulci was asked what he's most obsessed with. And the next day he came back with the word fate. And there was a whole new attitude in the writing process. And subsequently they came up with this. And that makes sense because this movie does have a lot to do with fate. Now, and apparently when this came out, it was largely dismissed. And I read somewhere, but I haven't been able to find too much about if that's true. But for the next 2 years, Fulci's career was pretty much dead. And he was writing, like, musical reviews for TV. Until, I always forget the guy's name. Until, Fabrizio De Angelis came across him and thought he was perfect to direct the script he was working on called Zombie 2. And then we have the Fulci we all know. Which, as far as that goes, this is not a gore film. There's some blood, there's a little blood, but it's more to the level of duckling and lizard woman skin. It's definitely not a gore film. This is definitely more atmospheric. This might actually be his most well-made film. It's definitely, it feels like a much bigger, well-made film. It's definitely more focused on suspense and atmosphere. All of his films have atmosphere. I mean, especially City of the Living Dead, but definitely also the sense of dread, foreboding, has a big feeling of that. So, yeah, it's definitely a different... Fulci's tried to do that a few times. Black Cat, Manhattan Baby, I guess Demonia, but it's never worked as well as this. I think as far as his non-gore films, that's more built on suspense and atmosphere, this one is the best. And one thing that's really clever about this is Fulci really lays everything out for us right in the beginning, and then we watch it pieced together as it goes on up until the end. Because story-wise, Jennifer O'Neill plays this woman named Virginia. It opens up in 1959 when she's a young girl, and she has this vision of her mother committing suicide by falling off a cliff. And actually, we get the same effect as the end of Don't Torture a Duckling. She's falling head first, her face is hitting the cliff, getting all fucked up, like the killer at the end of Don't Torture a Duckling. Although I think I will say it's a little more well done and less crude than in that film. And that actually did happen. So now it's 1977, or is it 78? Because the years 1972 and 73 play a big part of 77. She's it takes place near Rome. She's married to this wealthy I was seeing if it said what kind of businessman, but a businessman named Francesco. He's played by Gianni Garco. And then he leaves on a business trip, and she's gonna go to the airport. But she drives through a tunnel, and she has this vision. And it's the vision that sets up the entire film. This sort of rundown room, a lamp with a red shade, a wall that's been knocked down and opened, a broken mirror, a cigarette with yellow paper on the ashtray, a magazine with a certain woman on the cover. There's more as it goes on, but I think that's what she sees initially. She goes to see her, I think he's her psychiatrist, played by Mark Porrell, who is actually the priest in Don't Torture a Duckling. Also, the village simpleton, Giuseppe, from Don't Torture a Duckling. He's in this as well, in a small role. But, so, after she talks to him, and she says, it's visions of a past. Oh, because also that hole in the wall revealed the body of an elderly woman. He doesn't really believe her. He thinks it's a dream. But Francesco has just bought this big mansion, and she decides to go check it out. She wants to renovate it. The realtor or groundskeeper is the Giuseppe from Don't Torture a Duckling. She walks in this one room and realizes it's the one from her vision. So she sets the lamp up so she could see, and then she grabs a pickaxe, knocks open the wall, and there's a skeleton. Can't tell if it's not a recently dead old woman, but a rotted skeleton. Did I say skeleton? Wow. Skeleton. She calls the police. They think it's highly coincidental, but and the commissioner, whoever, says it's not an elderly woman, it's a woman in her 20s. It must have been her husband since he owns the property. He gets put in jail. So then she becomes obsessed with her vision and trying to clear his name. And then slowly things start showing up. Like, at one point, the magazine shows up at a shop. Also, they say that the body of the woman found in the wall was killed about 5 years ago. Oh, which I think he owned the house at that point. Evelyn Stewart plays Francesco's sister. That's one of the first small clues, was that 5 years ago, he was on a business trip. She rearranged the furniture, and there is a lot of attention to detail in this film, and it can kind of get hard to follow a bit. 72 was 5 years ago when he was on the trip. Which, well, I'm looking at a Wikipedia, but the actual events, I think it was like 73, because there's a whole deal with like a horse race and how it timed out. But eventually, the woman on the cover, this one guy who trains horses, because they see like a slight outline of a horse's face, and then they find the original picture that was sold to the magazine and realize it was part of like the 10th annual horse race, which was in 73, which means he had to have been on a business trip. Yeah, that's what it was, 73. When the girl was killed, so then Francesco's freed. And then there's some other talks about this very expensive painting that was going to be bought. I know it sounds confusing, but there actually is a lot that goes into this movie. Um, but eventually, it, well, I don't know if I should say that before spoilers, but as the movie goes on, more and more provisions, like eventually a CB light in a yellow taxi, she starts to see, and it all starts building up towards the end. Also, like many other Giallo, there's a lot of Edgar Allan Poe influence, like the Black Cat and the Casket of Amontillado, which both of those were influences on Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which is one of my favorite Giallos. I think this is very well acted. I will say the voice dubbing, because people do tend to talk fast and they do have their accents, so I did have to have the subtitles on for a lot of it. But the subtitles is the literal translation, so it's not always exactly what they're saying. But so I guess I'll just get into spoilers. But the biggest turn is when her friend Luca, who's played by him, he realizes that the magazine, it's annual 1, number 18 or whatever, which means it's the first year of that magazine's printing, which means that magazine could not have shown up in a vision of the past. Originally, they thought, oh, well, magazines always recycle their photographs, so it's very possible you could have seen it. But then he points that out, and that's when he tells her, I've been suspecting this for a while, but I don't think you're having visions of the past. I think you're having a premonition. That's sort of the big turning point of the film, I guess. So with that, I guess I'll get into spoilers. So, can I recommend it? Absolutely. Especially if you're a Fulci fan. And I mean a Fulci fan, not just a Fulci gore fan. I'd probably still say, as a Giallo, I like Don't Torture a Duckling and Lizard Woman's Skin a little bit more. But it's definitely, this is probably his most mature film. And just the atmosphere, like some of the scenes when she walks in the abandoned house, or when she goes to this other guy, Ross Beatty's house, the way it's lit, shadows, and these wide shots. There is a lot of zooms and pullbacks. They do a lot of zooms on people's reactions. They do a lot of pullbacks to reveal. But very well shot, looks great, well acted. The score is very subdued. There are some great, just very dreadful, sort of quiet type of score. It's not a big bombastic score. I really did like the score. It really had the Carpenter wallpaper effect that a score should have. So definitely a solid film. So I can definitely recommend it. But with that, I'm gonna get into spoilers. So right after Luca tells her that she's not having psychic visions of the past, but a premonition, her sister-in-law Gloria gives her a watch as a gift. And the big thing about the watch is that it has an alarm on it, which plays a 7-note tune, 7 notes in black. And then more images, like she's gonna get a yellow cab that has a blinking CB light. That happens, which actually, she asked the cab driver if cabs had CB radios back in 1972, and he says, no, this is a recent thing, which more establishes it's a vision that her vision is from the future, not the past. She gets back home and she gets a call on her answering machine of a woman, the old woman in her visions. She wants her to come by to have, because she has information for her. Of course, Giallo, if I have information for you, means I'm going to die before you get to me. If she gets to her house, she's already dead in the way she saw it in her vision. And that's the house that I thought was shot beautifully. She, like, wide shot, she's here, stairs are going up, and there's like shadow, light here, light upstairs, and it's lit and shadowed very, very well. But at the same time, that other wealthy businessman, Ross Beanie, who she saw in her vision with just a mustache, which we see him get shaved in the beginning of the film, but when she saw a picture of him, he had a beard. He shows up at the old woman's home. She thinks he's responsible for everything, so there's this chase. She tries hiding in this one area, but her watch gives her away. The only way to get to her is like this wooden scaffolding, which she falls off. And also, the sound design for this is very good too, because like when he screams, there's this great echo throughout the whole set. So the sound design for this film is good too. He lives. He's in like a body cast, but so then Virginia runs back to the abandoned house or the villa and calls Francesco. When he shows up, he has a limp, which her visions also showed her someone with a limp. Earlier in the film, it was said that Ross Beanie had a limp, but he got it fixed at some point. Another reason why she thought he was responsible. And then her visions really start coming together. Like, notices he sets the magazine on the table. She lights up a yellow paper cigarette. He takes it out of her mouth, sets it on the ashtray. Her whole vision starts coming together. Meanwhile, the police are talking to the barely alive Ross Beanie at the hospital, and he's able to say that some years ago, back in 1972, because while this is going on, Luca gets a call from the horse guy with the photo that he sold to the magazine, was that it wasn't the 10th annual horse race, because that horse had to be put down. So it was actually the 9th, the previous year in 72. The old woman, who, Virginia just found dead, she had a buyer for her extremely valuable painting. So Francesco, Ross Beanie, and Agnesa Vignardi, the dead woman found in the house and who was on the cover of the magazine, all had this, pulled a heist to steal it from her. So, and like, Ross Beanie admits to the police that he killed the guard. And there was this letter that, was it Agnesa or the old lady? Oh yes, that the girl had written to the old woman. That's what Ross Beanie was trying to get from Virginia. He wasn't trying to kill her. He was trying to get the letter. And so then, also says that Casati was already dead when he arrived at the house shortly, which I actually think he got there before Virginia, and she just saw him, who, having been killed by Francesco, who jumped out of a window and injured his ankle just then. And Francesca was the one that murdered the girl in the wall 5 years ago because she tried to run off with the painting herself. So at this moment, because Virginia found the letter at the house and the envelope was opened, I'm trying to remember if she did read it. I don't think she did, but Francesco finds it, realizes she has it, doesn't trust that she didn't read it, so he attacks her with a fire poker. She ducks on the first swing, breaks the mirror, another thing from her vision. Second one, he hits her, and then he starts walling her up in the wall, because I think the hole was still there from the beginning of the film. And we do get this great suspenseful build-up because it cuts back and forth between Rospini giving his confession, Luca putting the pieces together and racing to her and then getting pulled over, telling the cops to fuck off to lead them on a chase, and Francesco cementing and putting the bricks back in place. Again, the sound design, you hear like the grinding of the cement and the bricks with each one he lays. Eventually, Luca and the police show up. They allow Luca to be like, okay, you let us here. And this is when the whole casket of Amontillado, Edgar Allan Poe influence comes in. Because at first Francesco acts like, you know, my wife's been missing, I don't know where she is. No matter what Lucas says, you know, about like the broken mirror, who repaired the wall, and Francesco never lets up. So just as Luca and the police are about to leave, the chime on her watch goes off. And everyone hears it. It's a great moment. And then Luca turns to start walking towards the wall. End of movie. And I like that it's left ambiguous. You know, a lot of people will probably say, well, I gotta know what happens. They gotta make a sequel. So I sure, even nowadays, 1977, in 2021, 25 years after Fulci passes away, well, they should do a sequel so that we know what happens. I like ambiguity. And the ambiguity was actually Fulci's intention. I think he wanted to leave it a bit more ambiguous. But of course, that's also a touch of Telltale Heart, because it's the sound that leads them to the body. Of course, it doesn't... Obviously, it's going to be they find her, but the ambiguity is she still alive or not? But her vision and premonition came to fruition. And a lot of the taglines, suddenly she could see into the future and she saw her own murder. I think that's a bad tagline because that essentially does give the movie away. I mean, yes, right when Luca says you're having a premonition, not visions of the past, you can probably tell she's having visions of herself. But I think if they had a more clever one, it would have made the ending a little bit more better. You know, that it was actually her death that she was seeing, and this whole movie was her fate. You know, her vision was her fate all along. But I still think this is a very solid film. Yeah, it's slower paced, it's more talky than your typical Giallo or Fulci film. But it's so well shot, so well, you know, edited, and, you know, the way he uses his certain camera tricks and styles that he's known for, the atmosphere, the score, just the constant sense of dread that is just constantly building throughout this film is very well done. It's a very mature feeling film for Fulci, And I think this film is actually sadly overlooked. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it. And I think it's because it doesn't have that sort of guerrilla, Fulci kind of, or sort of against the grain style. It's sort of like a Romero style, which Fulci, Godfather Gore, Italian Godfather Gore, it's like Romero's the American Godfather Gore. They both have this very see what shot works in the editing room kind of way of shooting. But this has like a very, you know, there's a lot of competence to this one. And it's a very big feeling film. Big, mature, very well put together, well written, very solid. And sadly, it is one of his more overlooked films. And I think that's not good. But The Psychic, I actually really enjoyed. I'm not sure where it stands on my Giallo list or where it stands even for Fulci films. I would definitely say it's his most mature film, but I'm not sure where it would be on my favorites. But yeah, that is Lucio Fulci's 1977 The Psychic, also known as Seven Notes in Black or Murder to the Tune of Seven Notes. Both of those I actually like more. And then the third one that I always forget, Death Tolls 7 Times. I think that's my favorite one. But yeah, very, very solid film. It's a shame it's overlooked. It's a shame it actually ruined Fulci's career up until Zombie 2, but Fulci had a lot of bad luck and tragedy in his life, so. But that is The Psychic. Stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.